Hey, beautiful people, you know what time it is. It is a chat with Rashina. Listen, I have my medicine ball. If you do not know about the Starbucks medicine ball, you need to get you one. If you got a cough, you got a sore throat, the medicine ball will change your life. So I've had a cough for a couple of weeks now, but this medicine ball is getting me right. But I want to encourage you, don't change. I know the society, your family, the church, everybody is asking you to change. One of the things that I had to learn in my process of becoming is to find my authentic self and walk in that immutable lane. I think a lot of times we change because people can't hold our greatness, or they don't want to acknowledge our greatness, or they don't know how to steward our greatness. So we find ourselves shrinking back, we find ourselves pulling back, and in doing that we are negating who God has called us to be. Behavior modification is just that. It's not lasting when you have behavior modification. I used to work with children, and that was a big thing. A lot of times, before we got proper knowledge when it comes to child development, we would just try to change the behavior, but at the root issue, it was still there. So here's the thing: change when God tells you to change, evolve when God tells you to evolve, make the necessary minor and major adjustments when God tells you to, but don't allow people and their inability to steward your greatness put you in a box. Don't let people muzzle you because they can't acknowledge, or they don't want to hear your voice. There's a scripture in the Bible where one of the prophets, I forget who it was, but one of the prophets, he was basically proclaiming the word of the Lord, and they told him to be quiet. Like, we don't want to hear the voice of the Lord through you. And he was like, I can't be silent because, for one, yesterday I was out there with the sheep, but today God called me to do this thing. So I would rather obey God than follow your edicts. Like, I'm not doing that. And I think a lot of times we find ourselves, like I said, shrinking and pulling back in certain spheres, in certain environments, because people can't handle all the greatness, all the amazingness that's on the inside of us. Don't shrink back. Don't change. Don't change unless God is prompting you to make the adjustments to look more like him. Listen, you have a unique agitation. You have things on the inside of you that rub you the wrong way. And a lot of times we'll ignore that rub. But it could be God saying you are the answer to the problem. And a lot of times people don't know they're the problem until somebody with your voice comes along. And so they don't want to receive your voice because they don't want to change in their lives. So do not shrink back. Do not shrink back. I spent many of years in a box of conformity, many years of not speaking, many years of literally being without a voice because I was worried about what somebody else would say about what God has placed in my mouth. I can't anymore, because here's the thing: I'm doing this world. You will be doing the world, your sphere, your vineyard, a disjustice if you don't stand up in all of you, if you don't stand in the totality of who God has called you to be. Don't change, okay? Don't change. I know society will tell you got to do this. The church will tell you got to do this. We're actually in a sermon series at Change Church that's entitled God Didn't Say That. Like, there's a lot of church traditions and church forms of religiosity that we're sitting in, then God didn't say that. So my encouragement is, find your freedom, find your voice, and you stand up in all of who God has called you to stand up in, because you would be leaving this earth with a deficit if you don't be all of who God's called you to be. So don't change unless God is prompting you to change. That quirkiness, that corniness, whatever the case may be, that analytical side that people are telling you too much, you ask too many questions. Listen, you have that unique wiring for a reason. So you run your race and never let anybody else dim your light.